a grassroots NGO based in Nigeria. We work with women and young people on different thematic areas. We are glad to have in our midst today Dr. Thompson Shengeta. Is a strong member of the campaign to stop killer robots at the global level, and also Dr. Jaja Victory with the Nigerian Embassy in African Union Commission, Ethiopia. Some of the convictions we have for this program is that an average African youth has the passion, often have the desire to enlist, to know more about the digital space. Or are we doing all this with passion? Then secondly, African governments, African countries are always eager to sign treaties, to go into agreements. How are we making sure our policy documents are working for us as a continent? How are we making sure that we are stemming the tide of proliferating killer robots or artificial intelligence that may mar our future as a continent? For this event, it will be running for 3 days. We have today, as I've mentioned earlier, our speakers. We are really, really glad to have them on board. Dr. Thompson Shengeta and also Mr. Jaja Victory. They will be taking us on proliferation of arms and ammunitions, killer robots, artificial intelligence in Africa. What are the global efforts? When we put Africa in focus on issues of killer robots, what is our interest? We are known to be a third world continent whereby we don't really have capacity for technology. But how are we adopting technologies in this part of the world? Also, tomorrow, we'll be looking at the role of young people in the quest to stop killer robots, the campaign in Africa. What can the young people in Africa do to make government, to help improve policies in the areas of proliferation of robotics in Africa? And by Thursday, which is the 10th of September, we'll be looking at way forward on killer robots in Africa. We would like to have a youth position, the first of its kind in the African region, and also policy influence and advocacy. Tomorrow we also have an array of speakers that will be speaking with us tomorrow, same on Thursday. And for our participants who applied for this program and went through the rigorous selection, this will not be the end of the engagement on this program. We will also be taking it forward from here. If you follow us on Twitter, on the social media handles, you would notice that we said 1,000 youth voices by 2022. It's not ending yet. At the end of this event, we will look into having a draft of youth position, which will make available to the ECOWAS region, so to African Union Commission. We are also looking to mobilize more young people across Africa who can also engage their regional governments. And I'm glad to inform us also that we have 3 countries represented in this particular event today, especially for our participants. Note that this will not be the end of this program. We will continue to engage and we'll be following up with us and also supporting us to also hold as young people to hold our respective campaigns in our region. Without much ado, thank you very much. I think we have more people joining and more people joining. I know Dr. Shengeta, are you good to go with your presentation?
A very good morning to you, Tassin. Thank you very much. If I may kindly request, if you may allow me to share my screen, please. My screen sharing is disabled at the moment. If you may please allow me to share my screen.
Okay. Okay. All right.
A very good morning to everyone. I would like to start by thanking Tostin for this kind invitation to make some on this very important topic of killer robots. By way of introduction, I would want to start by perhaps telling a story about a man, a very good man who was concerned with the psychopathology of colonization of Africa by Western powers. A man who was a member of the Algerian National Liberation Front that fought for the liberation of Algeria, a man who was a Black political philosopher and a Pan-Africanist. A man also who was born in 1925 in Martinique, which is a French colony. His name was Frantz Omar Fanon, who in 1961 wrote a very well-known book called The Wretched of the Earth. Clearly, the mission of the generation of Frantz Omar Fanon and that of our forefathers was to fight for the independence of Africa, for the independence of many African states from colonial domination, and for the freedom of many African people from slavery. Yet, our generation is yet facing another potential colonialism, this time led by artificial intelligence technologies. Scholars like Abeba Bihan, who is a scholar from the Horn of Africa, have already referred to such potential colonialism as algorithmic colonization of Africa. Now, our generation, the youth of Africa, so to say, have a very critical role to play in deciding whether this new technology, these new inventions, artificial intelligence technologies, will play a role in the development of Africa or in the re-victimization, re-domination of Africa. And one of the technologies, or one of the AI technologies that are leading in as far as the potential re-victimization of Africa are killer robots. And when we're talking about killer robots, we are referring to those robotic weapons which once activated. Now, before I discuss the role of African youth in this global endeavor to ban killer robots or to regulate or to make sure that we maintain human control over weapon systems, I would want to share with you a video from the campaign to stop killer robots. The video is about 5 minutes, so please bear with me.
The city is under attack from autonomous weapons. Residents are ordered to stay inside and turn their lights down.
What should I do?
Just stay where you are. They're focusing on military targets.
They're firing at the building across the street.
They make mistakes. Don't panic. It might confuse them.
The dog's going crazy.
No.
The call to ban killer robots.
What we see is that these technologies that are developed for the consumer market are now also being used in military applications to kill people in a peaceful manner.
We've been out at the offices of Amazon, Microsoft, Palantir, Clarify.
No matter what we do here in the United Nations where I am today, it won't matter unless the people on the streets care as well.
I do support a ban on fully autonomous weapons as a United States Army veteran.
What the UN needs is pressure, and we want to provide that pressure. It's important that people know what governments are doing right now in their name we know that people do not want their lives to be cheap ways.
Based on my experience helping people build and train artificially intelligent models, this technology is too powerful and too inaccurate to be trusted to make a decision about whether any human being should get to live or die.
I work in IT field and thinking around. There's always computer glitches and everything else, so I think that would be a bad idea.
Weapons actually go out on their own, find their own targets, and kill them with no humans in control.
Without any of us control.
That big stand and make sure that they don't contribute to the development of killer robots.
Technology to be good to people, also to be harmful to people.
It's in the people's hand to make the government and join Team Human.
Support the call to ban killer robots.
The issue of lethal autonomous weapon systems, or better known as drones, is one of the utmost importance for the Secretary General. Machines with the power and discretion to take lives without human involvement are, and I quote, politically unacceptable, morally repugnant, and should be prohibited by international law.
Coming from Colombia, from Latin America, a place where most likely these weapons will be used, it terrifies me people that could be targeted by technologies they wouldn't even think of imagining.
These killer robots, as we lovingly call them, aren't a future problem anymore. They're possible today, and they're something that we need to work to control right now. There is absolutely nothing stopping a nation or any group of people from creating their own version of fully autonomous weapons systems today.
This is why we are here, to call for the launch of negotiations.
The field is out there, and when the real work gets done is when they start negotiating a treaty.
There is something wrong with the system that allows one state to stop negotiations on issues that are of deep concern to the entire planet.
So we're confident that negotiations will be launched, but that's not going to happen unless there is strong political will, political leadership from key countries.
I beg you to take action. I beg you to take care of our future we're going to be leading and basically take care of yourselves in the present.
Stop killer robots!
So my fellow African, young African brothers, as you can clearly see, the issue of killer robots is a very important and fundamental issue that will affect Africans in a very, very adverse manner. And it is very fundamental, it is very critical for African youth to participate, to call upon their own governments, to make sure that we ban killer robots before it is too late. As you could see from the video which you have just seen, there are various individuals from across the globe, various organizations that are actually participating in the call to ban killer robots before it is too late. And what is inspiring also from one of the speakers you saw from the video is that the youth are also being involved, calling for the ban on killer robots. And as you have also seen from the video, the discussions currently are at the United Nations. And you would clearly see that within the United Nations, for how the debate became or was introduced in the United Nations, it was through a South African professor, Christoph Haynes, who brought the issue within the confines or within the United Nations Forum. Africans, so to say, have an important role in this regard to play as far as the prohibition of killer robots is concerned. Nothing as was also highlighted from the video, will happen unless and until the people in the streets, yourselves included, actually participate or help in calling parliamentarians or African governments, so to say, to support the ban on killer robots. What we are seeing on the screen are some of the various concerns. My background is legal. As a lawyer, are some of the various legal arguments that we have been submitting to the United Nations. To say, for example, we want to ban killer robots because in terms of the laws, for example, that govern armed conflict, killer robots will not be able to comply with those laws, so to say. Civilians will be killed, women, children, those who are not participating in hostilities. If those kind of weapons were to proliferate to Africa or were to find themselves on the African continent, we will see many victims. And the current goal, which has been supported actually by many youth, of silencing the guns on the African continent, will not actually be achieved or will not succeed if killer robots were to be allowed to come into existence. We also argue that the use of killer robots in general will violate fundamental rights under human rights law, those which are guaranteed, for example, under the African Charter, the right to life, the right to dignity, where we say it is undignified. It is against the African principles of Ubuntu, the spirit of Ubuntu, the spirit of brotherhood, to allow machines to make the decision as to who lives or who dies. We have also argued that the use of this kind of weapons, we will see what has been referred to as an accountability gap, where we will not have anyone to hold account where, for example, those killer robots will commit crimes. Already as youth of African continent, you are aware that one of the problems, one of the challenges that we do have on the African continent is the issue of impunity, which we say, as a youth, you have a reason to demand to say we should be able to ban this particular weapon. I want to rush, because of time, to try and focus on one of the important role that I feel African youth will play in as far as the role in silencing the guns in the African continent and fight for technology that sustains rather than destroy Africa's future and development. Remember in my introduction, I mentioned that this generation, our generation, our role may be to make sure that artificial intelligence technologies that are currently being developed will not, for example, re-victimize where technologies that are developed in the Western context of Western powers are coming to the African continent without a critical analysis or a critical evaluation as to whether such technologies serve African interests. And I've mentioned that technologies such as killer robots will result in the victimization of Africa in many respects. And it is the duty of African youths to actually campaign against the development and use of these weapons. There are various, I'm not a person who is against artificial intelligence technology in general, no. But as a person who grew up in Africa, I'm Zimbabwean, I was born in Africa, I grew up in the rural areas of a small town called Shirugu in Zimbabwe, who is aware of the African troubles that we face. We have witnessed many African children sleeping hungry. We have seen the problem of us not having water. We have seen many things which are problematic in Africa, which can be solved through use of artificial intelligence technologies. I argue and emphasize that the use of Africa should demand from the government and other governments across the globe that there are much more useful technologies that we can invest our strengths, our research, our funds, and everything else to help the well-being of the world than focusing in the development of weapons which kill other humans without human control. Weapons that will result, for example, in what I've called the recolonization of Africa. And the reason why we say that, we have asked questions as to where, for example, will these weapons be used? This will be perhaps one of my second points which I want to focus on. When I say that, the African youth's role in the global fight against racial discrimination and domination and algorithmic colonialism can be more pronounced if we consider, for example, the following: the history of discrimination. I'm not sure if you as African youth, if you have not done that, I encourage you to go and watch Thabo Mbeki, former president of South Africa's famous speech in 1986 called I Am an African, where he talks about the history of domination of African people, and he mentions and emphasizes the point that one of the reasons or one of the factors that allowed the colonization, domination, and enslavement of the African people was the idea that certain peoples from other groups possessed certain technological or certain ones that made them superior to others. We are in the perhaps another phase of such a situation, where Western countries who are involved in the development of this particular weapon, particularly Russia, United States of America, China, and other big five, are the ones who are on the forefront developing these particular weapons. And I'm saying that if you look at the discrimination that is associated in the use of weapons, like the killer robots we are talking about, look, for example, the use of what you call them chemical weapons, the dropping of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There are books and books that have been written by scholars, some of them Afro-American scholars, who say that those bombs could have been dropped in other countries that were in the World War. This is actually a prime example when we say you can never trust technology. Technology always fails. When you think perhaps you are in control of it, you find yourself not being in control. Imagine if this is a situation where you are dealing with an autonomous system that is having power to decide over the fate as to whether someone lives or dies, and something of that mistake happens. You result in a wrongful death, so to say. And the example which I was talking about when I referred to use of atomic bombs, scholars have argued to say those weapons could have been used against other states who were participating. But the choice was for Asian countries, particularly Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The question was the decision to do that influenced, for example, by racial prejudice? We have other reasons which I want to mention, particularly issues of discrimination in the current use of force. I think you have already seen the discriminatory uses of force, recent Black Lives Matter movements concerning the deaths of Floyd and others. And we are saying the same people who are involved, for example, in the decisions of policing that are currently happening are the same people that are involved in the designing and development of these weapons. So the prejudices or the biases that they do have or they currently have may find themselves infiltrated or now coded into these particular killer robots, thereby exacerbating or worsening the situation of racial discrimination in the use of force. We also have the aspect where we talk about discrimination in the design and development stage of killer robots, where particularly it has been made clear that the current data sets that are being used in the development of autonomous weapon systems are not representative enough. And already, although we have African states, we have clearly said we do not want to support the development of killer robots. They are allowing Chinese companies who are using facial recognition technologies that are critical in the development of these weapon systems, to come and invest in Africa without proper regulation. Then that I've already made the point where I say that when you're looking at the development of killer robots they use, the question is, where will they be deployed? And the argument that I always make is that I do not foresee this kind of weapons being deployed in New York, for example, in London, for example, in Berlin, in Germany, for example, in Switzerland. No. It's likely that they will be deployed, for example, in developing countries for which we are part and will be victims. This is the reason why I believe the African youth, the people of Africa, should emphasize that we need to really take a step back and prohibit this kind of weapons. Now, also discrimination after use is the aspect where we say, where there has been a violation of international law or laws that protect the rights of individuals, the people responsible should be prosecuted. But already we have a history where we have seen powerful states. And then we, the International Committee, have called to say we need those soldiers to be held responsible. But those big states, because they're the big men, they have said no. Recently, I think you have heard about actually the United States putting sanctions on the International Criminal Court because the International Criminal Court was suggesting that American soldiers should be held account in Netherlands in the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So this idea that already we have an issue as far as accountability is concerned of violations that are committed through, for example, armed drones, which is a lower version of killer robots, then there is reason to worry as African youth and to demand to say that before we go any further, before it is too late, let us make sure that these weapons don't come into existence. Lastly, there's also an issue why I'm so passionate that Africans need to participate, is the fact that, you know, in the history of Africa, all the laws that binds us as far as the wars are concerned, regulation of wars or regulation of arms, were written when African states were just colonial states. They were not there at the table when those laws were made. We just had to accede to those laws. Our views, our challenges, our values were not incorporated in those laws. So now that there is an opportunity to regulate these particular weapons where African states can actually participate because we're now independent, it is actually fundamental for the youth, because it is our generation in the future who will be more affected, to emphasize that there is need for African states to participate effectively. Now that I've spoken more than I was supposed to, let me rush to my conclusion, where I say that, you know, indeed, African youth can make a difference in the global efforts to ban killer robots, and it is time, and I say this sincerely, to join what we call Team Human. By Team Human, we mean that human beings need to maintain human control over the use of force. We should never delegate the decision as to when to use force, against who, and with what severity, to machines or to algorithms. I thank you for your patience.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. Well done. Thank you, sir, Doctor. All right, wonderful presentation. Yeah. Wonderful presentation. Honestly, I'm always happy. And I'm also glad when I, you know, trying to get to know you, trying to get to read more about you. I noticed you are first and foremost an African and also a young person, a youth, an African youth. We need to do more. We need to mobilize. We need to join forces and, you know, strengthen each other to ensure we achieve our desired goals. Thank you for your presentation, wonderful. I can see so many questions for you on the group chat. I don't know if any of our participants we'll allow one or two to ask questions, then we'll read from the group chat also. So please, if you have questions, can you raise your hand? I can see in Phoenix.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for choosing me as a member of your session. I'm very happy to be with you. And I'm 100% convinced that you are a good initiative. Good luck for you. But me personally, I had the problem of understanding English because I'm in Morocco and I study in French. In French language, so it is very difficult for me to understand English very well. I would really like you to send summary by email after, if it is possible.
All right, thank you very much, our friend from Morocco. We are sorry we had thought we'll be able to, you know, do it in Francophone and Anglophone, but we are a small team, and anyway, we are still growing, and we believe that as we have more young people, we can also ensure our friends in the Francophone programs in their home countries also, and also, you know, mobilize French-speaking youth. We see boundaries in terms of being able to share these lines via our email if we are one of our registered participants. Thank you, our friend from Morocco. We move to the next session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good luck for all.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Apologies for, but you can speak English at the same time. This one you are speaking is good. Some of us can't speak French at all. All right, thank you, our friend from
You
Togo.
don't speak French.
No, we don't. Thank you. Also, we have Petit Emmanuel raising his hand. Petit, you have the floor, please. Your question in a minute to Dr. Shengeta.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. So I had a question. Since the doctor is talking about AI, like, is he saying that we should stop using AI, or what is his take on AI?
Okay, I will hand over to Dr. Shengeta to talk on that. Any other question before we hand over to Dr. Shengeta? Okay, if none, I noticed somebody asked a big question in the group chat. Adeyemi Adeshola said, please, what is the way out? In 3 big letter question mark. So please, I would like to add this to the questions, Dr. Shengeta. Please, what is the way out? What can we do as African youth? We know we are limited. What can we do as young people in Africa? There are a lot of challenges, as you already emphasized when you were making your presentation. A lot of young people would have been here, but most of them do not have access to, they don't have digital access. So what can we do as Africans in Africa?
Thank you very much for the questions that have been posed. I just want to start perhaps with giving some comments on the issue of language that was raised, which is a very, very critical point that has been raised there. Because one of the problems that currently exists in as far as understanding or Africa playing a role in the development or regulation or formulation of policy on artificial intelligence technology is the challenge of language, where you find, for example, that Africa has got many local languages that are present in Africa. And on those languages, you would find that some of the terminologies that are used in artificial intelligence technologies, including that related to killer robots, do not necessarily have equivalent terms in local languages. So translation actually also becomes difficult. Yet, for Africans who would want to participate, especially at grassroots, this becomes problematic. Me as a campaigner, for example, when I've been reaching out in Africa, I've always faced the same problem where you go to a community and you're discussing this issue and they say, but what do you mean by artificial intelligence? I can't find, for example, an equivalent of that term in my Shona language, what that means in Shona. So that again limits Africans. So this becomes remember the point which I made at the beginning of my talk, that what made it possible for colonization of Africa was the possession of superior technologies or weapons on the part of those who were coming to colonize Africa. And now we are again in a situation where AI technologies are taking over the provision of political, social, economic, and religious even services across the globe. Yet this critical technology that is that far-reaching consequence for all humanity across the globe does not have the equivalence of what it means in Africa. It's a huge problem that as African youth we need to be worried about. We need to be pushing our governments to say, no, this is something which we need actually to put as a priority on issues which they consider, for example, in Parliament. I want to go to the second question, which was, should we stop using artificial intelligence? Indeed, that's a huge question, and I want to reiterate what I said before. When I say I am not anti-technology, I'm not anti-artificial intelligence powered technologies. There are several technologies that play a fundamental role in as far as the development of Africa is concerned. Yet, so the point which we emphasize first is to say in regards to artificial intelligence technology in general is that it is coming from Western countries, it's tricking from Western countries to Africa. And we are saying When African governments take that technology or accept investment of that technology, they should not do it as an open check. There is need to be critical as to which technologies are beneficial to Africa and take into account the values and concerns of the African people. I could list a lot of examples which show that some of the artificial intelligence technologies that are developed in the Western context are not necessarily fit or proper to service African nations. So it's a call for caution. Then specifically relating to autonomous weapon systems or killer robots, I'm saying yes, they should not be used. They should not even be developed. And the reason why we are saying that is that the decision to use force against any person in terms of the right to life as protected in Article 4 of the African Charter and also as explained by the African Commission of Human Rights, we need to maintain human control over who uses force. So when we are saying ban killer robots, we are not saying ban artificial intelligence. We are talking about a specific weapon, which we are saying we should not go there. The third question which I want to answer, which have been asked, is what is the way out? And again, this is where I say basically there are many, ways or many things which we can do. But I want to focus too, particularly when we're referring to African youths on the African continent. Make sure that you both write to your parliamentarians, parliamentarians or MPs, the ones who represent your constituents. They are there when they come to your community. Write to them to say, we hear there is this issue of nations developing killer robots that will affect our future. What are you as our representatives saying to the parliament, in parliament, on behalf of us? We don't like these things. We don't like killer robots. So the moment you put and continuously write to your parliamentarians or MPs, so to say, it puts the matter on their agenda, and they may then start also acting in the United Nations in Geneva, because as far as participation of African states, while other African states are participating in these discussions, some are not. Why? Because the matter sometimes is not also even known. Remember, most of our parliamentarians or our leaders are old. This is a high-tech issue. So African youths have got a very important role to play to conscientize on this issue. And myself and many other people from Africa are willing to work with anyone in as far as any technical support, any education material that may be needed. Omar mentioned the issue of saying he's French or Morocco. I'm not sure if Arabic could be we also, as a campaign for Stop Killer Robots, have material which we can translate and provide to anyone who wants to participate in this debate. The second easiest way also to participate, tweet about it. We use social media as youth. The moment we create that momentum, where every youth, whatever you're talking about, maybe you tag #Stop Killer Robots. Everyone will start asking, what are you talking about? The moment we involve many of individuals on the African continent, the better and the more we will be close to ban these weapons before it is too late. That would be my answers to those questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shengeta. We are happy that you're one of us, and you are also a strong voice in the advocacy to ensure ban to killer robots. We appreciate your presentation. Please, thank you very much. We would like you to stay with us for the second session also. We will have Dr. Jaja Victory is been standing by. Okay, I'm being corrected. It's Mr. Jaja Victory. Mr. Jaja, you have the floor, sir. If you can hear us, can you say hello?
Hello, I can hear you very well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jaja.
My microphone has been muted as I didn't have the floor all the while. But thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you, sir. So Mr. Jaja will be today, which is the proliferation of arms and ammunition, killer robots, artificial intelligence in Africa. What are the global efforts? Africa in focus and African youth participation. What should we do? We have heard a lot from Dr. Shengeta. Mr. Jaja, I would like you to introduce yourself formally and also when you are ready to make your presentation, just say share the screen. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may begin to share the screen now. I'm sure my introduction will also fit in to the presentation which I have to make. And if I understand correctly, I do have 15 minutes, so I would do my best to ensure that I do all I can within the time frame. So like you said, my name is Victory Jaja. I'm not yet a doctor, but very soon. I was the Peace and Security Officer at the Embassy of Nigeria in Addis Ababa. And I would like to state from the outset that I am not giving any government opinion. I'm not authorized to do so, but I can speak as myself, reflective of my work in peace and security on the continent, and also reflective of my training and my expertise, which I would say it's not so bad. I want to congratulate the previous speaker, Dr. Thompson, for an excellent presentation. Indeed, he inspired me bringing first the Frantz Fanonian dictum, the Frantz Fanonian saying that as a generation, we have to know what it is that we must do. And here again, we are confronted with the issue of the proliferation of arms and ammunitions, and in the new dimension, killer robots, artificial intelligent weapons. So what is Africa going to do about this? What is the world doing about this? What can we do, and why should we do what we must do? I have a short presentation. So straight away, I'd like to begin from my introduction. If you could move 2 slides. Yes, 2 slides, thank you. The next slide, thank you. So arms proliferation is, the next slide please. Arms proliferation is a serious issue. It's a major issue in Africa, and actually West Africa and the Sahel. You know, we see weapons. I want to say here that the weapons that are currently ravaging Africa, the weapons that are killing Africans, are not made in Africa. The weapons that the bandits are using, the terrorists are using, are not made in Africa. So if we think that Africa has low capacity for robots, development of robots and AI technology, and therefore we should not be bothered, this is ample reason to be bothered, because the weapons which are currently killing Africans are not made in Africa. So if we allow other weapons to be made, then who knows where those weapons could land? They could certainly also emerge in Africa. Previously, with the conventional weapons, states can engage terrorists. We can talk with them. That's the essence of peace building missions. We engage these people, we de-radicalize them. But how do we negotiate with robots? How do you talk to robots? Something that has already been programmed, how do you bring them to the table to negotiate? That completely wipes that option off the table. Let's go to the next slide. Weapons proliferation has indeed increased, and the previous speaker made mention of the atomic bomb. Before that bomb, we didn't know that mankind had such capacity for destruction. I mean, that's the bomb on Hiroshima, which was dropped on the 6th of August 1945, killed over 135,000 people instantly. It is measured to have about 150 kilotons. What does that mean? We'll see that in the next slide. The most powerful weapon which has ever been tested, of course, is known as the Tsar bomber. It was developed by the Soviet Union, and it produced an explosion of 50,000 kilotons. That is 3,300 times the power of the Hiroshima bomb. If the Hiroshima bomb killed 130,000 people instantly, imagine what a bomb that has 3,000 times its power will do. This is just to draw our attention to the weapons available now. And if these weapons are, for any reason, transferred in one way or another to some robots, it completely takes away the basic principle of warfare itself, which is the principle of predictability. When we use weapons, when weapons are being used by humans, there is predictability. We know what kind of weapon to use for what particular category of conflict. But when it is handed over, when we abdicate this responsibility to robots, how do we measure what these robots will do? How do we measure where they will drop this bomb? And of course, there's also the issue of the clandestine and, should I put it this way, the conspiratorial uses of warfare, when they weaponize things and target maybe a particular race. You know, there's conspiracy theories about these things. So this is a cause for concern. We can move to the next slide. Now, when we talk about AI and killer robots, can we even classify them as strategic? Because we already have some conventions to cover strategic weapons. Can we consider them as strategic? If drones are fitted with nuclear explosives and they are guided by artificial intelligence, how do we classify them? How do we react to it? What activities can we undertake to mitigate the scourge of proliferation of weapons? Well, here again, we have to be proactive rather than reactive. Somebody has just done the maths about if a bomb kills 135,000 people and then you multiply the power of that bomb by 3,300, someone does the math and it's a bit scary. So we have to be proactive right now. Other times we have been reactive. We have waited until these things have been developed before we decided to take action. But with artificial killer robots, we need to be proactive. It's no longer time to be reactive. Yes, the previous speaker made mention of the fact that most of these weapons are produced by powerful countries who are at the time being holding the progress of the campaign against killer robots to ransom. But there are some things we can do. There are some things we can do, and we shall consider them very shortly. Now, we can move to the next slide. Although killer robots are guided, the autonomous nature of AI and killer robots makes monitoring and result prediction very difficult. Next slide, please. There is also the possibility of, like I mentioned, you have some bands, some rogue groups who can clone these either they clone or they hack into the weapon systems, and then they have access to robots that have been empowered with nuclear payloads. You know, these are serious challenges. But we have actually made some progress in the past, like some of which are currently highlighted on the slide. Africa in general, when it comes to nuclear weapons, Africa in general was particularly very vocal. We were unrivaled. We recall after the Hiroshima bomb of 1945, then the great powers began exploring with the bombs. So between 1945 and 1960, there were several tests. The year when we gained our independence, 2 nuclear devices in the Sahara in April and in, I hope I get this correctly, I think in February and in April of 1960. So 2 nuclear weapons were detonated in February and April. And after our independence in October, there was a 3rd French nuclear device which was detonated in the Sahara. And we forcefully resisted that. That was the first diplomatic action Nigeria took. We sacked the French mission here in Nigeria. Among a range of other things, we helped or gathered other African countries through the instrumentality of the United Nations. We mounted pressure. So we had the series of talks on the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. When Nigeria was the leader of the United Nations General Assembly in 1978, we began talks about a Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, and that talk lingered, and the treaty was only signed in 1996. But Africa as itself decided to sit on the table and say, we as Africans, we would ensure that we have an African nuclear weapons free zone. That is, the entire continent of Africa will be nuclear weapons free. I think this is something we can replicate. We can say the entire continent of Africa will be killer robots free. We would not have anything to do with any company that is known to be invested in killer robots and stuff like this. We can move this legislation. There are things we can do, and it's time we begin to do them. We need to be proactive rather than reactive. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Who should act? Who should act? I mentioned governments. Governments can act. The previous speaker also mentioned that the governments can act. Governments can make legislation. You can write to your parliamentarian. You can speak to them. Then apart from legislation, we can create the conditions for development. We have the role for governments. We also have the role for regional organizations like ECOWAS, SADC, COMESA. We can have multilateral agreements. We can strengthen regional cooperation and also ensure enforcement. It's not that one country decides, or in a regional agreement, we decide to isolate countries or companies doing business related to killer robots. When one country or group of countries decide to isolate them, some other countries go through the back channels to do business with them. No, we must speak concertedly so we can work from the regional level. Indeed, isolating countries and companies investing in nuclear technology and or nuclear weapons technology was one of the things Africa did, and did it very well. Similarly, we can work through international organizations. We can get multilateral agreements like the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty we mentioned. For Africa, we had an African Nuclear Weapons Free Zone Treaty, which was called the Pelindaba Treaty. We can also work towards technology transfer, to build our own local capacity, and we can ensure more international cooperation on this issue. Then, of course, we have civil society and professional bodies. You have a lot to do: advocacy, enlightenment, pressure groups. In history, we see that most of the things our governments did against apartheid, against nuclear weapons, came as a result of the pressure from civil society groups and from professional bodies, urging their governments are right, that this is what we must do, this is what we should do, and this is what we should not do. So the ball is also in your courts as civil society actors, professional bodies. We can step up advocacy, enlightenment, increase pressure, also grassroots mobilization in English and in French now, as much as we can. We can, like killer robots, artificial intelligence. We know these are not originally words that were from our local languages, but we can find a way to translate these things into our local dialects to ensure that people are aware of these issues and how that these issues can affect them. So basically, that will be the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you again for the opportunity and look forward to more interaction in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaja, for that wonderful presentation, and thanks for your recommendation. Yes, we all hands must be on deck. We all are important in this process. I cannot agree more. Please, we have questions for, I can see some chats here. Please, if you have questions for Mr. Jaja Victory, you can drop your questions in the chat box, or you raise your hand and you'll be allowed to take the floor to ask your question. Okay, I can see some questions here in the chat box. Seeing most Africans, somebody asks, I think this is from Elona Erezi, seeing that most development actions are guided by policies, what are the best ways youths can be involved in crafting policies that relate to these issues? I hope you get that, Mr. Jaja.
Yes. Should I react to it right now, or I wait for the other questions,
okay,
then I react?
Do we have any other? Okay, if none, please go ahead and react to that, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question. Well, it's something we have heard time and again, that youth need to be involved in policy. But the challenge that we the youth, I think I am, the challenge that we the youth have is how to participate in policy, how to participate at the levels of policy development, which appear to be above our reach. But I would like to say that those levels are not above our reach. We are able to participate, able to make things trend. Now to make things trend. We can make things trend. We can make them trend, first of all, on the social media. We can channel discussion towards this. And once these issues begin to trend, we can also form ourselves. We have a lot of expertise as youth. We can also form ourselves to have some groundwork or research into these policies. What kind of policy do we want to see? First, we make the policy issue trend. Then we propose charts, propose forms for which this is the issue of killer robots, like the previous speaker mentioned. We can make it a hashtag, make it trend. You see, once it becomes a top trend in your country, then you begin to show models what government can do. Government can legislate. Government can encourage companies to be transparent, to show that they do not do business with companies that are invested in killer robots. So we can participate. We can make issues trend. We have the numbers. Africa is a youth continent. We have the numbers, so we can make the numbers count. And apart from making the numbers count, we can craft the policy in a way that it suits us. Yes, thank you. I answered the question.
Okay, without much ado. Okay, I think we have a question from our Moroccan friend also. Musa, you have the floor, please. Okay, you can drop it in the chat box because of our time. We don't want to keep our participants waiting. All right, Mr. Jaja, Elona is putting, she's putting a poser here. And I am reiterating this because it's, are you with me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, Elona raised a poser, and I will say I'm in that line also as somebody that has been in civil society area in Africa, working for some time, I know it's very, very difficult breaking into policymakers' arena. You know, she said something here. She said, yes, participation and entry could be difficult for African youth. How do we go around this? Because most, even policies that are meant for youth hardly include young people in Africa. How can we address this?
Okay, thank you very much. First, I can say that I do have a background in civil society. Before I began working with government, I do have a background in civil society, community mobilization as well. I still maintain it does appear difficult, but we do have the resources right now. We do have the opportunities available to us. The social media space is huge, is massive. We have crowdfunding. We have influencers, social media influencers. We have people who can post a message and they have more audience than the presidents of their countries. We have young people who have more followers on Twitter than their presidents have, than their government institutions have. So we need to find ways for these avenues to begin to count. They should count. We need to make these avenues count. Yes, we may not be in government, but that doesn't mean we do not have power. You know, in Africa, we have equated being in government and being in position to being in power. But we actually have power. We have people who listen to us. We can mobilize people to our cause. And once it's a just cause, you know, killer robots. Somebody did the maths. Imagine if robots have the capacity to decide where to drop a nuclear weapon. And our previous speaker talked a lot about discrimination. He put aside Black Lives Matter. You know, it's clear that artificial intelligence weapons and devices around us, they have already been programmed subconsciously without knowing. They've already been programmed to think that the black person is a criminal. He's first a criminal. They've already been programmed that way. Nobody maybe made the conscious program, but it's already now existing. So if a robot decides, let's now do away with the problems of this world, they can just drop one weapon on Africa. In fact, there's a talk I gave late last year, still on this issue of artificial intelligence. We can never detach machines from humanity. Humans have to be in control at all times. So back to the question, it may appear difficult, but we have the power. We have the avenues. Let's begin to make these avenues count. Let's not equate being in position or being in government with power. From our own phones, from our own networks, we can begin to make and have the much desired impact and bring the change which we want to see.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jaja. Thanks for that wonderful response to the questions. Finally, I think our Moroccan friend was able to drop his question on the chat, and I want to believe your response has also, treated the question. I can see Dr. Shengeta's hand. Maybe we'll take that as the last for this. You have the floor, sir, Doctor.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to start by thanking the core panelists for wonderful insights on the issue of the role that has been played, for example, by African states previously in the regulation of weapons and prevention of proliferation. And there's no doubt, actually, that African states, particularly recently, have done wonderful work in as far as regulation, for example, or treaties to deal with nuclear weapons, for example. And the advantage which for example, the African states have within the United Nations forum where the issue of killer robots is being currently discussed is that they have numbers, as you rightfully points out. I wanted to emphasize the point, though, which he makes on the aspect of you know, that as African states or as African youth, we need, you know, to make sure that we do not have anything to do with companies that are developing killer robots. Why I find that point to be very important is this aspect where my fear sometimes, my concern is that while African states have taken positions, there are African states that have clearly taken positions in the United Nations, that they do not support the development of killer robots, and that killer robots must be banned. But some of them may not necessarily see the interrelatedness between some of the investments that are being made by certain companies from Western world in their countries, which have got a direct impact or connection with the development of killer robots. For example, in 2019, end of 2019, there were these articles actually which were being flagged saying that Chinese companies and Western companies investing in African in facial recognition technologies in need of African faces. Because for you to be able to train killer robots, you know, because they use data sets, you need faces, you need that data. So there's this idea where companies may come to Africa with the issue of saying, oh, we're trying to help you to fight crime, you know, you need to use this technology. Yet that company has got its headquarters back home. We do not know how they are using the data which they're collecting from African peoples. And this is one of the things which we say African states, especially the youth, can help African governments in understanding the interrelatedness, the interconnectedness of data privacy, for example, and the development of killer robots, which they say they don't want on the continent. The one last thing which I want to mention relates to the question which was kept being asked to my co-panelists, the issue of like, you know, what can we do really as the African youth? And I was also asked the same question. I wanted to end with this thing of saying that, you know, we remember my initial point when I started my talk. I said the thing of saying each generation has got its own call. The people who fought the liberation struggles were barely adults. Most of them were in their teens. They were teenagers. Yet they made the decision to go into the forest, into the, you know, whatever bundles to fight for their independence. So this idea that, oh, some people may think, who may be listening now, like, oh, but I'm just a child, I'm young, what can I do? I would actually even give reference. Remember, for example, in 1976, the well-known South African Soweto uprising, which contributed mostly to the independence of South Africa from apartheid, or the fight against apartheid. It was done by Black students from secondary schools. Those are the ones who decided, they made the decision to say, no, we are not going to take this. And by that, I want to end by a quotation from one guy called Gift Gugumona, who said that, you know, as youth, you should never underestimate the power within you, because you may be the only person in the entire universe to solve a specific problem. And in this regard, I actually emphasize to say, no one is coming to help. It is the African youth, it is the youth of this world. We have to take a stand on how we use technology, how we you know, govern these inventions to make sure that AI is only for good, not for bad. I would like to end on that note.
So much, Doctor. Wow. I like that statement. The power lies within us. That is the reality. We should not expect help from anywhere. We should look within and work within and join forces to ensure we be the change we want to see. Thank you very much, and thank you to all our participants. We are so sorry that we took over time. We're supposed to spend about an hour for this Zoom workshop, but we spent up to an hour, 30 minutes. Doctor, thank you very much. We hope you can join us tomorrow also Tomorrow we'll be looking into the role of young people in the quest to stop killer robots, and we have a young African, a Nigerian, that will be speaking tomorrow, and also Dr. Ayola Amale, the president of Women International League for Peace and Freedom. That is WILPF Africa in Ghana. So we'll be sharing, they will be sharing their thoughts also with us tomorrow. We hope you can join us then. We'll be, sharing next steps at the end of our workshop, and hopefully we hope to have a youth position, like I mentioned earlier, from the reports that we have and from agreement of participants and our selected ambassadors. Hopefully, maybe before the end of this week, we'll be sharing via email. Doctor, we want to thank you for joining us, and also Mr. Jaja for the wonderful presentation. We'll be sharing the slides with all participants, and our Moroccan friends, I hope you can, read further from the slides that we'll be sharing later after this presentation. Thank you. I can see you waving your hands. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can have a group photograph. Is that possible, my team? There's a way please, if you are on, can you just put on your video so that we have a group photograph? Is it? All right, thank you. Please, we just want to have a group photograph in few minutes. All right, thank you very much. We've been able to do that. On this note, we'll call it a day. Yeah, Mr. Jaja, I would like to say bye-bye. Thank you. Together, we are stronger. Let's not forget, and should also mobilize other young people across Africa. We'll be sharing other opportunities tomorrow for our participants and on Thursday. Don't forget to join us. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.